He would later understand that the night itself was not the mistake. The mistake was believing it would end cleanly. When Daniel sat across from his boss in the dim hotel bar, he was still a father first, still a man who woke early to pack lunches and fold small shirts that were never his size. He told himself this mattered. He told himself lines would hold. But power has a way of softening edges when no one is watching. What happened between them lasted only a few hours. No promises, no future language. Just a quiet crossing that felt contained, almost reasonable. 3 weeks later, she stood in his office doorway after everyone else had left. "I'm pregnant." Nothing in Daniel's life had ever sounded more final. If you stay with this story, take a moment to like or subscribe. It helps these quiet stories reach the people who need them. The conference was supposed to be simple. 1 overnight stay, 2 presentations, a return flight before dinner the next day. Daniel had packed lightly, the way he always did: 1 change of clothes, a toothbrush, his laptop charger. He left Lily with his sister and reminded her twice that the blue folder was for math and the red one was for reading. She nodded without looking up, already busy with something small and important on the floor. By the time he checked into the hotel, the day had settled into his shoulders. The room smelled faintly of cleaning solution and recycled air. He set his bag down, didn't unpack, and checked his phone. No messages. He sent one anyway. "I'm here. I'll call before bed." Then he placed the phone face down on the desk and sat on the edge of the bed longer than necessary. The meeting had run late. There were questions that didn't need to be asked, discussions that circled without landing. Claire had stayed at the front of the room until the last chair scraped back. She always did. She thanked people by name, gathered her notes, and waited until the room was empty before turning off the lights. Daniel noticed these things because she made it hard not to. He hadn't planned on going to the bar. He told himself he was just looking for a place to sit that wasn't his room. The lobby was quiet, carpeted in muted colors meant to absorb sound. The bar was tucked to the side, dim but open. A few people sat scattered, their conversations low and contained. Claire was already there. She sat with her back straight, jacket still on, a glass of water in front of her. She looked up when he approached, surprised but not unsettled. She nodded once, a small acknowledgement that could have meant anything. "You don't have to," she said, gesturing to the empty stool beside her. "I know," Daniel said. He sat anyway. For a moment, they didn't speak. The bartender passed behind them, the soft clink of glass marking time. Daniel kept his hands on his knees. He thought about Lily's shoes by the door at home, the way one was always tipped on its side. He thought about how early he would need to wake up. "You handled the last section well," Claire said finally. "Thanks. That data's messy. You stayed clear." He nodded. Praise from her always landed heavier than it should have. He reminded himself it was just work. He had done his job. She asked if he wanted a drink. He said water was fine. She didn't comment. That felt like a kindness. The conversation stayed where it belonged at first. Deadlines, travel schedules, the inconvenience of weather delays. Daniel checked his phone once, then put it back without unlocking it. He kept his jacket on, even though the room was warm. It gave him something to adjust when his hands needed to move. At some point, the bar emptied. Not all at once, just a thinning like sound fading at the end of a hallway. Daniel noticed the quiet only after it had settled. Claire noticed too. She glanced around, then back at him. "We should probably head up," she said. "Yeah." Neither of them moved. It wasn't desire that shifted things. It was proximity and fatigue. The way the day had worn down the edges of judgment, the way being seen without performance felt briefly like relief. Daniel told himself he could stand up. He told himself he would. Instead, he listened as Claire spoke about her first job, about learning when to speak and when not to. He listened because listening had always been safe. When she touched his arm, it was brief, a punctuation more than a sentence. He looked down at the contact, then back up. She didn't apologize. She didn't explain. She waited. The room didn't change, but something in him did, a quiet, giving way. He thought of Lily again, sharper this time. He thought of the morning. He thought of how contained this felt, How limited. They didn't talk about what followed. There were no promises, no language about later. The night stayed narrow, bounded by walls and time. When it was over, Daniel returned to his room alone. He stood at the sink with the water running, hands under the stream longer than needed. He watched them, red from heat, steady. He turned off the light before getting into bed. His phone buzzed once on the desk. He didn't check it. The room was silent. The night had passed. But something had stayed behind. Daniel woke before his alarm, the way he usually did at home. The difference came a second later, when he reached out and touched the smooth surface of the hotel nightstand instead of the worn wood by his bed. The room was still dark. For a moment, he stayed where he was, letting his eyes adjust, waiting for the sense of displacement to settle. He showered quickly. He dressed without turning on the overhead light. The mirror above the sink caught his face in partial shadow, unfamiliar but intact. He looked the same. That felt important. At the airport later that morning, he bought coffee he didn't finish and stood near the window until boarding was called. He sent Lily a message before takeoff. "Good morning. Be nice to your aunt." She replied with a picture of her cereal bowl and nothing else. He studied the image longer than necessary, then put the phone away. The flight passed without incident. Clouds gave way to ground. Time moved forward. By the afternoon, Danny was back in his car, driving the familiar streets home. He picked Lily up from his sister's apartment and listened as she told him about a book she was reading. He nodded at the right places. He asked questions when they were expected. That night he cooked pasta and cut vegetables too small. Lily complained, then ate anyway. He checked homework. He signed a form. He read one chapter of a book and stopped where the bookmark already was. Routine held. The next morning followed the same pattern. Alarm, breakfast, shoes, backpacks. Daniel moved through it all with practiced efficiency. If there was a change, it was only in the way he checked the time more often, as if measuring something unseen. Work returned him to structure. Emails, meetings, reports. Claire existed again as a name at the top of messages, as a voice in group discussions. She kept her tone even. She didn't seek him out. He didn't seek her. Daniel took the long way to his desk when he saw her coming down the hall. He arrived earlier than usual and left later, waiting for the building to empty before packing up. When he passed her office, the door was open, lights on. She was on a call, posture unchanged. He didn't slow. At home, Lily asked why he was quiet. He told her he was tired. It was true enough. Days passed, then weeks. The night at the hotel remained unspoken, but it was not absent. It showed up in small adjustments. Daniel chose seats farther from Claire in meetings. He asked questions by email instead of in person. He read policy documents he had never opened before, scrolling through sections that describe boundaries in neutral language. One afternoon, Claire canceled a one-on-one they had scheduled months earlier. The email was brief. "Need to reschedule. We'll follow up." She didn't. Daniel stared at the empty hour on his calendar. He filled it with work he could have done later. When the time came and went, he closed the document and sat still, listening to the hum of the office. That evening, Lily forgot her jacket at school. Daniel drove back after dinner to get it. The building was quiet, lights dimmed for the night. He signed in at the front desk and waited while the security guard unlocked the lost and found closet. The jacket lay folded on a shelf, small and out of place among coats meant for adults. Daniel held it against his chest as he walked back to the car. At home, he hung it by the door. Lily watched from the table. "Thanks," she said, already distracted. He nodded. He stood there longer than needed, hands still on the hook, feeling the weight of the fabric. The next day, Claire didn't attend the weekly team meeting. Her absence was noted, then moved past. Someone else led the discussion. Decisions were made. Daniel contributed where required. He felt a low unease settle, not sharp enough to demand attention, but persistent. He checked his phone during lunch. No messages. That night, after Lily was asleep, Daniel sat on the edge of the couch with his laptop open and did nothing with it. The screen dimmed. He closed it without saving anything. The routine was still intact, but it no longer felt complete. Claire returned the following week. There was no announcement, no explanation. She was simply there again, walking the hall with the same measured pace, coffee cup balanced in one hand, tablet in the other. If anything had changed, it was only in the way people watched her for half a second longer before looking away. Daniel noticed before he saw her. The air in the office shifted subtly, like a room adjusting to a familiar weight. He straightened papers on his desk that were already aligned. He closed a browser tab that had nothing to do with work. When she passed, she nodded once, professional and contained. "Morning," she said. "Morning." That was all. Their next interaction came in a meeting room with glass walls and too many chairs. Claire stood at the head of the table, outlining a new phase of the project. Her voice was steady. She used the same language she always had. Clear, efficient. When she assigned tasks, she did it without hesitation. Daniel's name came last. "I'll need you to handle the reporting side," she said. "Coordinate with finance. Keep it clean." "Okay." She met his eyes for a fraction of a second longer than necessary, then looked away. No one else seemed to notice. After the meeting, Daniel returned to his desk and opened a new folder. He labeled it carefully. He double-checked dates. He sent emails with neutral phrasing and waited longer than usual before hitting send. He was aware of his posture, his tone, the way his chair angled toward the aisle instead of toward her office. Authority showed itself in small structures. Claire no longer stopped by his desk. Questions that once came directly to him now arrived through shared inboxes or through other managers. It wasn't punitive. It was procedural. That distinction mattered. Daniel told himself this was better. He ate lunch alone more often. When colleagues invited him out, he declined with reasons that sounded reasonable. He needed to finish something. He had to leave early. He sat in his car sometimes, engine off, windows cracked, eating a sandwich while listening to the distant sound of traffic. At home, Lily's routine remained unchanged. She spread her homework across the table, pencils lined up by color. Daniel helped when asked, correcting spelling, checking math. He watched her closely, as if looking for signs of something he couldn't define. She hummed while she worked. She seemed fine. One evening, after Lily was asleep, Daniel checked his work email again. A message from Claire sat unread, time stamped an hour earlier. "Can you stay late tomorrow? Need to review something in person." There was no greeting, no explanation. Daniel read it twice. He typed a response, erased it, typed again. "Yes. What time?" The reply came quickly. "After 6 should be fine." The next day moved slowly. Daniel finished his tasks early and reviewed them again anyway. He avoided Claire's office even though the door was open. As the afternoon wore on, people began to leave. Chairs rolled back, lights dimmed in clusters. By 6, the floor was mostly empty. Daniel stood, smoothed his shirt, and walked down the hall. He stopped outside Claire's office and knocked once, lightly. "Come in." She was seated behind her desk, jacket off, sleeves rolled up. Papers were spread in front of her, though none appeared urgent. She gestured to the chair across from her. "Thanks for staying," she said. "Of course." They spoke about work at first, numbers, timelines, a potential issue with a vendor. Daniel took notes, though he already knew most of it. The conversation stayed within bounds, careful and restrained. Then Claire closed the folder in front of her. "There's something else we need to address," she said. Daniel waited. He kept his hands folded in his lap. "I've spoken with HR," she continued, "about adjusting reporting structures." He nodded once. He had expected this, though he hadn't known how. "For now," she said, "I won't be your direct supervisor. Another manager will handle your evaluations." "Okay. This is to avoid any complications." "I understand." The words felt practiced on both sides. Necessary. Claire's expression didn't change, but her shoulders lowered slightly, as if releasing a held breath. "There's more," she said. Daniel looked at her, really looked. The office light cast sharp lines across the desk, separating them cleanly. She hesitated, just long enough to register. "I'm pregnant," she said. The sentence landed without force. No emphasis, no explanation. Daniel didn't speak. He felt the room narrow, not closing in, but focusing, like a lens tightening. He noticed the hum of the lights. The faint sound of traffic outside. When? He asked, finally. A few weeks. He nodded again. He gripped the edge of the chair with one hand, grounding himself in the pressure. I don't know what this means yet, Claire said. I wanted you to hear it from me. Okay. She stood first. The meeting was over. Daniel remained seated for a moment after she left, staring at the closed door. When he stood, his legs felt steady. He turned off the light as he left the office, the switch clicking softly in the quiet. The hallway lights shut off behind him, one by one, as he walked away. Daniel sat in his car for several minutes before starting the engine. The parking garage was nearly empty, concrete pillars casting long shadows under fluorescent lights. He rested his hands on the steering wheel and looked straight ahead. His breathing was even. That, too, felt important. The drive home followed streets he knew without thinking. Red lights. Turns taken by habit. He parked in the same spot in front of his building and stayed there after shutting the car off, listening to the engine tick as it cooled. When he finally went inside, he locked the door behind him with more force than necessary. Lily was asleep. Her bedroom door was open, a soft light from the hallway falling across her bed. One arm hung over the edge, fingers curled loosely. Daniel stood in the doorway and watched her breathe. He did not touch her. He did not move closer. He stayed where he was, as if distance itself were a form of control. In the kitchen, he poured a glass of water and drank it in slow, measured sips. He rinsed the glass and set it upside down on the counter. He wiped a spot that wasn't dirty. He opened the refrigerator and stared at its contents without taking anything out. When he sat down at the table, the chair scraped loudly against the floor. He winced at the sound, then waited for it to fade. The apartment settled back into quiet. He thought about Claire's voice, not the words themselves, but the way she had said them. Flat. Certain. He replayed the moment without embellishment, as if accuracy might soften its weight. It did not. There was no space for panic yet. Panic required motion. This was something else. A narrowing. A shift in gravity. Daniel opened his laptop and searched for company policies. He scrolled through sections on conduct, disclosure, conflicts of interest. The language was neutral, designed to be read without emotion. He read it carefully, not skipping ahead. He took notes in a blank document, bullet points without commentary. At some point, his phone vibrated. A message from his sister. Lily left her lunchbox here. I'll bring it by tomorrow. Thanks, he typed back. No rush. He closed the laptop without saving the document. The next morning, Daniel woke later than usual. He moved through the routine with slight delays, toast left in too long, coffee forgotten until it cooled. Lily noticed. You okay? She asked, mouth full. Yeah, he said, just tired. She accepted this without question. Children often did. At work, the day passed in fragments. Daniel completed tasks but felt removed from them, as if watching himself from a slight distance. The reassignment email came mid-morning. Clear, brief. Another manager copied in. No explanation offered or required. Colleagues adjusted without comment. Questions redirected. Processes rerouted. Daniel answered when asked and kept his voice steady. He did not see Claire that day. The absence stretched. One day became 2. Then 3. Her calendar blocked out in ways that were visible but unreadable. Meetings canceled or delegated. Daniel resisted the urge to speculate. Speculation felt indulgent. At home, Lily lost a tooth. It happened at dinner, sudden and bloody. She laughed, holding it up between her fingers, half proud, half startled. Does this mean I get money? She asked. Yes, Daniel said. That's how it works. He wrapped the tooth in a napkin and set it aside. Later, after Lily was asleep, he placed it under her pillow and tucked the blanket back into place. His hands were careful, precise. That night, he lay awake longer than usual. He stared at the ceiling and counted breaths. He did not imagine the future. He did not allow himself that. The call came the following Friday. Claire's name on the screen. Daniel let it ring twice before answering. Yes. Hi, she said. Is now okay? Yes. There was a pause. He could hear ambient noise on her in traffic maybe. Or a cafe. "I wanted to check in," she said. "About next steps." "Okay. I'm meeting with HR again next week. There will be formal documentation. I'll keep you informed." "Thank you." Another pause. "I don't expect anything from you right now," Claire said. "I just wanted you to know." "Okay." They ended the call without goodbye. That evening, Daniel stood at the sink while Lily washed her hands beside him. She splashed water onto the counter and grinned when he pretended to be annoyed. He handed her a towel and watched as she dried her hands, missing spots, leaving damp streaks on her shirt. "Dad," she said, looking up at him, "are you mad?" "No," he said. "Are you sad?" He considered this. He looked at her face, open and expectant. "I'm thinking," he said. She nodded, satisfied. She went back to the living room and turned on the television. Daniel stayed at the sink, hands resting on the edge, feeling the cool surface beneath his palms. The water continued to run until he turned it off. Something had been said, something that could not be taken back. And the room, the world, had already begun to rearrange itself around it. The paperwork began quietly. An updated reporting chart, a calendar adjustment, a short meeting with a manager Daniel barely knew, who spoke carefully and avoided eye contact when the conversation drifted too close to explanation. Nothing explicit was said. Nothing needed to be. Daniel's role remained, but its edges shifted. Decisions he once made alone now required review. Meetings he once led were reassigned. The changes were framed as temporary, procedural. He accepted them without protest. Resistance felt unnecessary. It also felt dangerous. The office responded the way offices often do, with politeness and curiosity that never fully surfaced. People asked fewer questions. Conversations stopped when he entered break rooms. He noticed the way eyes lingered, then moved on. The silence around him thickened, not hostile but cautious, as if everyone were waiting for instructions that hadn't arrived. He adjusted by becoming smaller. He spoke less in meetings. He sent follow-up emails instead of raising points aloud. He arrived early and left late, timing his schedule to avoid overlap. When he passed Claire in the hallway now she nodded once, the same as always. There was no visible strain. That, more than anything, unsettled him. At home, the silence followed him in a different shape. Lily talked as much as she always had, filling space with observations and questions. Daniel listened, answered when needed, nodded at the right moments. But he missed things. A spelling test date, a note in her backpack, the burn on the bottom of a pan he'd left too long on the stove. One evening, Lily stood beside him while he scraped the pan clean. "You're not listening," she said, not accusing. "Just stating." "I am," he said. She shrugged. "Okay." She walked away, and the space she left behind felt larger than it should have. Daniel began sitting in his car after work, engine off, key still in his hand. He watched people walk past his building, dogs tugging at leashes, couples arguing quietly, a man unloading groceries with deliberate care. He stayed until the light faded, or until he felt foolish, whichever came first. Claire's absence became more pronounced. She worked remotely more often. When she was present, her office door stayed closed. HR meetings appeared on her calendar as block time. Daniel did not look longer than necessary. He did not ask questions. The rumor arrived before the confirmation. It moved without names, carried in fragments. Someone was pregnant. Someone was stepping back. Someone had crossed a line. Daniel heard it secondhand, distorted, stripped of detail. He did not correct it. He did not defend himself. Silence again felt safer. The formal meeting with HR happened on a Tuesday morning. A small conference room. Neutral art. A woman with a calm voice explained policies Daniel already knew. Disclosure. Documentation. Next steps. She asked if he had anything to add. "No," he said. She nodded and made a note. Afterward, Daniel returned to his desk and opened a spreadsheet he had been working on. He stared at the numbers without understanding them. He closed it and opened another file. Then another. None of it held. At lunch, he walked farther than usual, past places he recognized into streets he didn't. He bought fruit he didn't want and ate it standing up. He threw the rest away. That night, Lily had a school play rehearsal. Daniel sat in the back of the auditorium on a folding chair that wobbled slightly. He watched her stand on the stage with a group of other children, all of them trying to remember where to stand. She scanned the room until she saw him, then smiled, quick and relieved. The smile landed harder than he expected. After rehearsal, she ran to him, talking all at once. He listened, really listened, grounding himself in the sound of her voice, the weight of her backpack when he took it from her shoulder. "You're late," she said. "I know," he said. "I'm sorry." She considered this. "It's okay," she said. "You came." At home, after Lily was asleep, Daniel opened his laptop again. He updated his resume for the first time in years. He kept the language factual. He saved the file. He did not send it anywhere. The waiting pressed in. Not dramatic, just constant. Waiting for decisions he didn't control. Waiting for consequences that hadn't fully arrived. Waiting to see what would be taken and what would remain. Claire emailed him once, late, about a report detail. The tone was professional, the question precise. Daniel replied with the information requested, nothing more. When he closed his laptop, the apartment was quiet. He stood in the middle of the room, unsure where to go next, then picked up a stray sock from the floor and folded it. It was a small thing, but it was something he could finish. The silence did not lift. It settled. The first real decision Daniel made did not announce itself as one. It arrived quietly, in pieces, over a few days. He noticed it in the way he stopped waiting for emails, in the way he stopped checking calendars that were no longer his to manage. The waiting had begun to feel like avoidance. And avoidance, he understood, was also a choice. Claire asked to meet him outside the office. The message was brief, sent early in the morning. Coffee. Near the station. Before work. He agreed without hesitation. The place she chose was narrow and functional. No music, no soft lighting. People came in, ordered quickly, left. Daniel arrived early and stood near the window, hands in his pockets, watching commuters pass with fixed purpose. Claire arrived on time. She looked the same, but not. Her coat hung open instead of closed. She moved more carefully, as if aware of her body and space. They ordered without discussion and sat at a small table by the wall. They did not talk about the night. They did not talk about feelings. Claire spoke first. HR wants to formalize things soon. They'll want statements. Timelines. I expected that, Daniel said. There will be questions about intent, about pressure. I know. She nodded. She did not look at him when she spoke next. I want to be clear. I don't feel coerced. I don't feel taken advantage of. Daniel listened. He kept his posture still, his hands flat on the table. But, she continued, I also know how it looks and what it costs. Yes. I won't stay in a role that puts my credibility in question. Daniel absorbed this without comment. He had already understood it. Hearing it aloud did not change its shape. I'm telling you because it affects you, she said. Because there will be fallout. I understand. She studied him then, briefly. You don't have to say anything now. I know. They finished their coffee. They stood. There was no gesture toward familiarity. They parted cleanly, turning in opposite directions without pause. At work, Daniel asked for a meeting with the new manager assigned to his department. The request was simple. The meeting, when it came, was not. I want to move, Daniel said, once the door was closed. Laterally, different team. No reporting overlap. The manager leaned back, considering. That would stall your trajectory. Yes. You're up for promotion next cycle. I know. Is this voluntary? Yes. The manager nodded slowly. I'll need to document it. That's fine. The conversation ended without resolution. That, too, felt expected. At home, Daniel began sorting through things he hadn't touched in years. Old files, receipts, a box of photos he hadn't looked at since Lily was small. He didn't linger. He sorted, stacked, discarded. Action steadied him. One evening, while he worked at the table, Lily sat across from him drawing. She watched him for a while before speaking. "You're doing everything slow," she said. "I'm trying not to miss anything," he replied. She nodded, then returned to her drawing. After a moment, she pushed the paper toward him. It was a house. 2 windows. A door. Stick figures inside. "That's us," she said. He looked at it carefully. "I know." She picked up her crayon again. "As long as you're here, it's fine." She said it without emphasis, without waiting for reassurance. Just truth, offered and released. Daniel held the paper longer than necessary. He did not respond. He did not need to. The meeting confirmation came the next day. A role change approved, temporary, with no timeline for reversal. Daniel accepted it the same way he accepted most things now, without comment. He packed up his desk at the end of the week. Not fully, just enough to mark the shift. A plant he'd been watering for years. A framed photo of Lily on her first day of school. He placed them carefully in a box and carried it to his car. The building looked the same as he left, but his place in it had already moved. Daniel started the new role on a Monday. No announcement was made. His access changed quietly, different folders, different meetings, a new desk on a floor he rarely visited before. The space was smaller. The window faced another building instead of the street. He set the box down and unpacked only what was necessary. People were polite. They asked how the transition was going. They said things like temporary and strategic in voices that suggested both words were fragile. Daniel nodded. He thanked them. He did not correct anything. The work itself was fine. Narrower, less visible. He was no longer shaping direction, only maintaining it. He followed instructions. He delivered on time. His name appeared less often in meetings. When it did, it passed quickly. He did not see Claire anymore. He knew, abstractly, that she was still there. He heard her name once in passing, attached to a project he no longer touched. He did not ask for details. The cost showed up in ways that were easy to miss. A pause before responding to emails that once came easily. The absence of invitations, the quiet relief of not being watched, paired with the dull ache of no longer being trusted with more. At home, the change surfaced differently. Daniel came home earlier now. He cooked with more care. He checked Lily's backpack every night. He listened more closely when she spoke, even when she talked in circles. One evening, Lily sat at the table doing homework while Daniel folded laundry beside her. The television was on low in the background. She worked for a while, then stopped. "Why don't you work late anymore?" she asked. "I changed jobs," he said. "Did you get fired?" "No." "Did you quit?" "No." "Did you quit?" "No." She thought about this. "So you just moved?" "Yes." "Is it worse?" Daniel folded a shirt slowly. He placed it in the pile before answering. "It's different," he said. She accepted this. "Different is okay," she said, and went back to her work. The next week, Daniel received the formal confirmation email. The language was careful. Voluntary adjustment. Professional discretion. No impact on current compensation. Future advancement subject to review. He read it once and archived it. He printed one page anyway. He placed it in a folder at home with other documents he rarely needed but wanted within reach. He labeled the folder simply Work. Claire's pregnancy became visible in the office before it was acknowledged. Not to Daniel directly, but in the way people shifted their attention, in the way schedules adjusted around her. He learned of it the same way he learned most things now, through absence. Meetings reassigned, emails forwarded, decisions delayed. He did not reach out. One afternoon, as Daniel was leaving, he saw Claire in the lobby. She stood near the elevators, speaking quietly with someone from HR. Her posture was different now, protective, deliberate. She did not see him. Or if she did not signal it. Daniel walked past without slowing. The moment was brief, contained. It did not ask anything of him. That night, Lily asked if they could have pancakes for dinner. Daniel said yes. He mixed the batter carefully, measured ingredients instead of guessing. Lily stood on a chair beside him, watching the pan. "You're good at this now," she said. "I've had practice," he replied. She smiled, satisfied. After dinner, while Lily brushed her teeth, Daniel stood at the sink and washed dishes. The sound of water filled the space. He felt steady, tired, but steady. Later, as he tucked Lily into bed, she reached for his hand. "You're not going anywhere, right?" she asked, eyes already heavy. "No," he said. "I'm here." She nodded and closed her eyes. The question did not return. Daniel sat on the edge of the bed for a moment after she fell asleep. He watched her breathing even out. He listened to the quiet of the apartment settling around them. The cost had been paid. Not all at once, not loudly, but it had been paid, and he understood now that choosing first did not mean choosing easily. It meant choosing what stayed when other things fell away. He turned off the light and closed the door gently behind him. By the time Claire's pregnancy was formally announced, Daniel had already adjusted to not being part of that layer of the company. The email came through the general channel. Warm, professional, carefully worded. It congratulated her and outlined an interim leadership plan. Names were listed. Daniel's was not among them. He read it once and closed it. The office moved on the way offices do. Calendars filled. New priorities took shape. The disruption folded into routine. Daniel's days became predictable again, though smaller in scope. He learned the rhythms of his new team. He stopped checking floors he no longer worked on. The building became a series of places he passed through without attachment. At home, the routines held with less effort now. Mornings ran smoothly. Lily tied her shoes without help. She packed her own lunch, occasionally forgetting something and improvising instead. Daniel watched these changes without comment, registering them the way he registered weather. One evening, he noticed a gap on the hook by the door where his old work badge had once hung. He had returned it weeks earlier, part of the transition. He hadn't replaced it with anything. The space remained empty. He left it that way. The months moved without ceremony. Claire went on leave. Someone else occupied her office. Daniel learned of it when he walked past one afternoon and saw a different name on the door. He did not stop. He did not look inside. At Lily's school, a notice went home about a father-daughter event. Daniel pinned it to the refrigerator and marked a date on his calendar. When the night came, he picked Lily up early and drove her there. They sat at a table with paper and glue, working side by side, without much conversation. Lily concentrated, tongue pressed lightly against her teeth. Daniel followed her lead. On the drive home, she leaned her head against the window. "Did you have fun?" he asked. "Yes," she said. After a pause, she added, "You're different now." He glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "Different how?" She shrugged. "You don't look so tired." He considered this and said nothing. At work, Daniel received a performance review. Solid. Reliable. The language was careful, emphasizing consistency over ambition. He accepted it without resistance. When asked about long-term goals, he said he wanted stability. The answer was noted and not challenged. That evening, he cooked dinner and left the window open while the pan cooled. The sounds from outside drifted in: voices, traffic, a radio somewhere down the block. Lily did her homework at the table. She asked for help once. He gave it and returned to the stove. After dinner, he washed the dishes and placed them on the rack to dry. He turned off the light in the kitchen before moving to the living room. The apartment felt settled, shaped by use rather than intention. Later, as he prepared for bed, Daniel caught his reflection in the mirror. The lines on his face were familiar. The person looking back at him was not new, just more exact. He turned off the light and went to check on Lily. She was already asleep, one leg tangled in the blanket, hair spread across the pillow. He adjusted the blanket slightly and stepped back. He stood in the doorway for a moment, then closed the door partway, leaving it open enough for light to pass through. In the quiet that followed, there was no sense of resolution, no feeling that things had returned to what they were. But there was space where something had been removed, and within that space a steadier shape had formed. Daniel lay down and closed his eyes. Outside, the building lights across the street went dark one by one. The night passed.